Hello everybody, Shazam519 here, and well, it's nearly the end of the year, so I wanted to take a look back at the standard banner and see where every unit on it ranks today. Now, I am planning on making a beginner guide for Honkai Star for the beginning of 2024, but I wanted to make this video separately because I feel like it wouldn't flow very well in the beginner guide, so I'll just be referring people to here. So if you're here from the beginner guide, thank you very much for joining for wanting to see how these beginner characters are rated. Now, two quick things. One, I haven't been making a lot of Honkai Star content. I simply have not found, since Dun Hung came out, nothing has really released, but I'm like, damn, I really want to make content on this or any units. So I'm like, I would really like to, make a video on this. That's mainly why. I will also, a little disclaimer, we will only be looking at these units in context of a beginner account. I will not be taking into consideration whatever banner is currently live. Neither will I be talking about, oh, well, this unit is, I don't know, they are S tier because in the end game, they are extremely good, or this character is a D tier because they're only good in the early game, or they don't have a use anymore. I'll simply be talking about how useful are these characters overall. I won't be saying, oh, well, this character can clear Memory of Chaos 10, this character can't. So let's get started. First of all, we have Yanqing. I will put him in D tier. In the context of purely the beginner banner, because that's what this is, right? Obviously, purely the beginner banner, nothing else. I think he has to be in D tier for new players. The issue with this character is that while he is a DPS, he is relying on a lot of RNG. It's like, because of his talent, when he does this, he has a chance to do that, and that has a chance to freeze, and that has you then have a chance to trigger additional damage. Then he gets more damage every turn where he does not get hit. But if he gets hit once, all the stacks reset. It's a whole lot of RNG, and generally speaking, I think he is the least useful unit on here. I think you can make him work if you really wanted to. Honkai Star, just like in Genshin, if you are willing to put the time in and work up and pull for the supports, then yes, they'll be able to clear the end game if needed, just like how people in Genshin are able to clear stuff with units like Deya. But I will say, in context of a beginning player who won't have the necessary 4 stars to to make the most overpowered scenario for him with the most support, and him never getting hit, I don't think it's very worth it. With units like Flame Trailblazer, he could work because Flame Trailblazer taunts, which means that every single character has to target him. The issue is that there's a lot of endgame where the Trailblazer can get stunned, which I don't think is a big factor too much in most scenarios, but seeing as he does something to protect the entire team and to allow the DPS to function, not to perform better, but to function, I think that's important. And on top of that, AoEs, boom. Right? Normally AoEs to me with tanks are not that big of a deal because letting everyone take a hit, I mean, you can heal it off. However, with him, he will lose all of his DPS stacks that he was building up from his talent. Overall, I think he is the weakest unit on here by far. Now, next up, we have Bailu. Now, Bailu, I think, is a certified S tier. Let's talk about it for a second. One of the biggest, how do I say this, critiques that people have about Bailu is in her skill. Now, let's break down real quick what Bailu does. Basic attack does not really matter. She's a healer. She doesn't heal on basic attack, so it doesn't matter. What does matter, however, is her skill. That is what the main critique is. So Bailu is a healer that skills off her HP, how much she heals. When she does her heal, she heals one target once, and then she does 2 more healings, and those are random. So you could have all 3 healings land on the same target, you could have 1 of them land on a target, and 2 of them land on a character max HP. People don't like the randomness of it. In my opinion, that's not a big deal. And the reason why is because the skill is not what makes her as good as she is. If the main healing and the main buffs and all that came from, or the main utility came from her skill healing, I would agree it would be a huge downside. But the thing is, it doesn't. Most of the utility does not come from her skill. It comes from her ultimate. Her ultimate, when used, heals all parties, heals all allies in the party, and gives them each 2 stacks of Invigorate. Now, what Invigorate does is every time that unit gets hit and they have a stack of Invigorate, it consumes a stack and then gives them a bit of healing, meaning that a certain amount of the damage is basically negated by the healing. Now, this doesn't work on one-shots, but there's not a whole lot of things that work on one-shots, right? And this is absolutely amazing because it means that she can use her ultimate and then you have enough healing to survive another turn or maybe 2 extra turns, which gives you enough time for her to build up her ultimate again. And even if you have to go 1 extra turn without Invigorate on some units, her ult does a burst healing before giving Invigorate to the character so she can make up for it again if you have enough HP. One more thing that's extremely useful on Bailu that I don't hear a lot of people talking about when they're giving her critique or are trying to judge her is a revive. When a character dies, once during battle, if a character dies and Bailu is not stunned, she can revive them back to a certain amount of their max HP and bring them back to the field. This is a very, very useful ability, especially in areas like Memory of Chaos. And just that ability alone is so insane. So just for that, I would have to put an S tier. Another thing I do need to mention is the context of her role. In the when the game first came out, she was S tier. That's not even like that. She is just S tier because there was only 2 healers in the game at the time: Bailu and the free-to-play Natasha. Natasha's only edge over Bailu is the ability to cleanse debuffs and stuns off of your allies, which is a very strong mechanic, but Bailu's insane amount of healing. I mean, at the end of the day, if your ally doesn't die, they can just reach it back to that point. We have so many characters that can make up for like a small lost turn. So it's not that big of a deal in my opinion. But if you're new to the game, you're better off having Bailu than just Natasha. Now, if we look later on in the game, because obviously we're not talking about day 1, where at the end of the day, this ranking needs to be in the current day. The other healers that we have are Huahua, who just left. This is something that will be relating to hopefully people who are just starting at the end of 2023 or the beginning of 2024. Huahua will not be back. Locha might be back in a rerun relatively sooner or relatively later. I don't know. Currently, it's Silverwolf's rerun, and Locha and Silverwolf came out about the same time. Locha was the part 1 banner, and Silverwolf was the part 2 banner, if I recall correctly. Sorry. Silverwolf was the part 1 banner, Locha was the part 2 banner. So yeah, maybe it could be around the corner, but we don't really know the rerun order perfectly well. I'm pretty sure Jing Yuan has not even rerun yet, who was basically the 2nd premium unit in the game. So we'll see when he comes out. And then the last healer that we have is Lynx, which is a 4-star, which she just got featured again recently. We don't know when she'll be featured again, and praying that you get a 4-star without them being featured that's not something you can bank on. Heck, even sometimes when they are featured, they can be very difficult to pull. In context of all of that, I would say Bailu is definitely S tier. If you get Locha and you think Natasha's enough, sure, you can work without it. But if you get Bailu as your beginner 5-star, do not be saddened. She's an absolutely amazing healer, even to this day. This is coming from someone who has Huahua, who has Lynx. Bailu still finds a very good spot in most teams. Now, next up we have Welt. I only recently pulled Welt. I still didn't really have enough relic luck to give him a proper build yet, so it's going to take a while for me to use him, but I'm going to speak on what I've seen and what I've been told. Welt is a certified A-tier unit. Welt works better in the later game, like mid-game, end-game, because he can slow down enemies, which gives you more chances to attack. He can do the imaginary break effect. I don't remember what it's called. Entanglement, I'm pretty sure it is, on the enemies, which basically locks them for a turn. Extremely useful. Overall, he is a great zoner, a very good. He can fit on a lot of hyper carry teams if you want to. Sometimes you have other better options. And of course, we're going to be getting a free doctor ratio in 2.0 somewhere. So we know when, but I don't recall the exact dates from like the beginning and the end time of when it's going to happen. But yeah, we're going to be getting a Doctor Ratio who is going to be imaginary as well. And Welt works really well with imaginary units. So overall, I would say an A tier. He's a very solid unit. He's a zoner, meaning that he slows down the enemies. He stops them from being able to attack. He does the role extremely well. A unit who is built to do something and does it well. What more can we say about Welt? Overall, I would be very, very pleased if I started a new account now and my beginner 5-star was Welt. Next up, we're gonna have Himeko. Now, Himeko we're gonna be putting on C. The reason I'm putting her there is I want to first give a bit of context, right? Because a lot of people might be surprised that she isn't in D tier. And for new players, you might be wondering why people would be shocked. Now, it's because when the game came out, she was the worst 5-star in the game. These two were, in my opinion, the worst 5-stars in the game, but this guy was a DPS. We didn't have a ton of hyper carry DPS at the time, or well, we did, but people weren't really... The game was new, you know? There's not a lot of, like, people who will randomly pick a 4-star DPS instead of their new shiny 5-star DPS and go, oh, let me see how good of a hyper carry they are. But the difference, the reason why I would put her a tier above him is because there's no support for him in this mechanic. We have not gotten a single new taunt unit since release date. We have not gotten a single new taunt unit. Somebody to take the heat off of him. Maybe if we someday get a unit that buffs ice damage allies and also makes it so that if there is an AoE attack, they can cover one ally from getting hit. Maybe they can give a character an invincibility. They can like apply taunt and give an ally a one-time invincibility shield where if they get hit, it doesn't count as them getting hit. Something like that could definitely pop him up like higher, and then maybe we can see what he would be able to be like on a team that can consistently give him what he needs. However, Himeko right here, she doesn't really fit anywhere, right? And it's mostly because when we looked at endgame, or well, she didn't fit in anywhere at the time because there was no support for her follow-up attacks. So for people who don't know what Himeko does, generally she's just an AoE character, but her unique mechanic is whenever an ally's toughness meter, which is the white meter underneath their health bar that goes down when you hit them with the correct element, whenever those are destroyed or like emptied by you hitting them with the correct element, she does a AoE follow-up attack, which is which is a very powerful gimmick. If she does the correct amount, if she does enough damage, you have to build her quite well for her to do that. Sadly enough, on most teams she can fit on, including the follow-up teams, there is just better options. Right? It's very rare that you run her on that. However, the reason why I put her in C tier instead of D tier is because of events. Honkai Star has made a lot of events, has made a lot of like cool simulated universe temporary events, even some permanent stuff like Swarm. And on the lower difficulties, you can make very fun teams with Himeko, and it works. Because of her frequent follow-up attacks, especially when you have a boss that spawns a lot of smaller enemies, she is able to do a very good amount of damage, and because of that, I have to put her in C tier. She can be fun to run and is useful in events. Or in some events, let me specify that. There have been events where like follow-up attacks are extremely useful and you want to bring a fire unit, there you go. Now, next up we have Bronya. Now, Bronya is a difficult character for me to put. Now, obviously, if I was making this as a general tier list, right? Like not just in context of I played the game day one. S tier. That's not even a discussion. Not saying I'm not putting her now in S tier. I'm just saying that's an easy S tier. I want to give new players some context here, right? That Bronya is S tier no matter what. In the second you hit mid game, there's no reason for her to not be S tier. The question is, in early game, is she S tier? Yes. Yes, she is. For people who don't know what Bronya does, let's go over it right now. What Bronya does is her basic attack always crits. Now, she's not a damage dealer, so let's get that out of the way, but her basic attack always crits, which is something nice to mention, right? Next up, what she does is when she uses her E skill, she's able to give a character a free turn instantly, right? So they get to go past the entire order of events and just go straight to the top of the orders of what needs to happen and get a new turn. She also gives them a damage boost. Her ultimate gives her allies boosts like increased crit damage, right? Which is based on her own crit damage. So the higher her crit damage is, the more crit damage buff she gives to allies. These two things are extremely strong, and characters like Sela, for example, work well with her, but basically any hyper carry DPS benefits from this. Any and all hyper carry DPS benefits from this. There can be unique scenarios where, for example, a character wants to, I don't know, maybe he builds up additional crit damage every time an ally acts before them. And you want to get like 5 because then they get an insane boost. In those cases, obviously, in that character that I just made up in my head, in those cases, Bronya wouldn't work. But in like most hyper carry scenarios, even in my imaginary Dunhung DHIL team, where she wouldn't work because Dunhung is very skill point heavy, you can still use her on a manual team and she will do great. Even if you don't use your skill on Dunhung, she can still use her ultimate to make him do more damage. Absolutely insane how good she is, and I am shocked that she's a standard banner unit. Like, after playing Genshin, bro, when I saw how insane some of these free banner units were, I lost it. But yeah, she's definitely S tier for everyone, I would say. I don't think there is a single scenario where I would not put her in S tier. So yeah, insane support. Next up, we have Gepard. Gepard is solid A. I would say he's above Welt because, especially early game, he gives a certain level of utility that Welt just does not give. Which, not saying Welt is bad. Once again, A tier is not bad. He is absolutely amazing. Gepard gives his entire team... He's a shielder, right? So what he does is his basic attack and his skill don't really do a whole lot, right? They're both like attacking the enemy, nothing really insane. The main thing comes from two of his main abilities. One, whenever he dies for the first time in battle, he resurrects himself. Kind of like what Bailu does for other allies, but he does it for himself, which is a very, very strong ability. Especially when we have other characters like, for example, March 7th, who can make it so that most attack, or like more attacks can be targeted on Gepard, right? So that is a mechanic that appears frequently enough in the game, especially on the free-to-play characters. So that's very strong. But the important thing is his ultimate. His ultimate creates a shield based on his defensive stat, and it's spread across the entire team. So every ally gets this shield. This is very, very strong, and it allows you to catch up on healing, right? There could be times where you need the heals, but it's not ready. You can just pop his ultimate at any point in the turn and just protect your team until they can get their heals. Maybe the healer's ultimate is not ready. There is also Simulated Universe. Now, I have a video on my YouTube channel. It's like the only 1 hour video. It's not that far back. I'll try to link it in the comment section if I can, or in the comment section probably, or in the description. In the pinned comment probably, where I beat the all of Simulated Universe. The last 2 worlds are not in there, I think, but at the time, those like first 6 worlds, I beat all of them on the highest difficulty with a fully free-to-play team plus Gepard on a preservation route to show that Gepard can carry a team through all the end game content with just his shielding and the preservation ability, which does more damage depending on like, and gives shields and all this kind of stuff, right? So if you did pull Gepard, yes, he's not the big strong DPS that some people might want. None of these guys really are. Well, maybe Clara, but we'll get to her in a second. But he has great utility for early game players. You want to clear Simulated Universe quick. You want to get the rewards. You want to get the free light cones. Well, he can help you out with that. I can guarantee you that this guy will help you out, and he can solo carry the whole team through Simulated Universe just by himself. And once again, I did it with a full free-to-play team. So you don't even have to bring full free-to-play. You can bring other units as well that you want. You can bring some 4-star units that were not even released at that time that will probably help you guys out. So yeah, I think a definite A tier with the value that he brings. The issue is that the further on you get into the game, the more you don't really use the shielder, right? Like if you don't have a lot of healers, what people would do is they would bring Gepard on the other team, which honestly is very, very worth it. But overall, later on in endgame, most people don't run him anymore. They'd rather... His slot usually gets filled up by a healer, gets filled up by somebody else that would give more damage buffs to the DPS, that kind of stuff. Now, last but not least, we have Clara. Now, I think Clara definitely deserves to be an S tier. Clara is one of those characters, along with Welt, that got a ton of like buffs, not in their stats, but in team composition over, well, the last few months. Welt got it in the sense of imaginary being more important. Welt was the only imaginary character when the game released. Right? Let's bring some context to that. Welt was the only imaginary character. So eventually, you know, he got more buffs around that. But Clara is insane because let's break down what Clara does, right? Clara, her basic attack, she's a physical character, right? A berserk character. So her basic attack does not really matter, a single hit. Her skill is an AoE attack that hits everyone on the field. It's not adjacent. And it does, obviously, berserk damage. Her ultimate and her talent is where the main important lies. So let's talk about those. Whenever she gets hit, right, her Svorog, which is basically this big robot dude, which I will not be talking about more because you guys still have to play the story, but this big robot dude counterattacks. He does a blast from his hand and counters the enemy that hit her. Even if she's hit by an AoE or an adjacent attack, all that matters is if she takes damage, she counters. So she then counters the enemy, does good damage, that is nice. She has an increased chance to get hit, I'm pretty sure, in one of her passives. Oh no, I think it was actually to negate status effects. But whenever she ults, she gets an increased chance to get hit. She gets 2 little stacks on her, right? And what happens is whenever she counters, she consumes one of the stacks, does a stronger counter, and it also does less damage than the main hit, but still damage to the 2 enemies standing adjacent, so one to the left, one to the right, of the enemy that she hits with a counter. She also gains damage reduction, which is just... it's just insane. It is absolutely insane. How well she's able to tank and how many attacks she pulls towards her. One of the combinations that people used very early on, and some people still use, which is very effective, is March 7th, who can make it so that an ally that she gives a shield to gets targeted more, or has a higher chance to get targeted, and Clara for more counters. Now, next up, basically, the next thing I need to say about Clara is the support that she's been getting, right? We just talked about Welt support a little bit to give some context, but we got a character named Topaz, and what Topaz does is she increases the follow-up damage that a certain enemy receives, which is basically the thing that Clara needed. Clara was always just a filler slot. She was like, oh damn, I have my healer, I have my DPS, I have my buffer, what else do I bring? I mean, you might as well bring Clara, it's free damage, right? It's free damage. But now she has a proper team, which is a follow-up team. Once again, with the free doctor ratio coming out, you could make like a proper follow-up team with her, Topaz, when she gets a rerun eventually. But yeah, and all right, how could I forget to mention this? How could I forget this? Some insane maniacs, very talented people. When the game came out, what they would do is with a not even max leveled Clara, they would beat every stage in Simulated Universe. But here's the thing, unlike with Gepard where he carried the team, Clara was the team. They brought no other units. It was just Clara. The other 3 slots were empty. Even with level 55 or level 60 Clara, they would clear the entire event. Now, it was RNG heavy, right? Not as much as you would expect, but the fact that it was possible even without a maxed out Clara was just insane. And this was still early on in the game, so don't expect them to have the best the best relics or anything like that, right? So if they can do it with that, you guys at home could definitely clear most of it with Clara and a proper team. Now, overall, I think I'm happy with the tier list. A few things I want to say. Bailu and Bronya, right? Afterthoughts right now. Bailu and Bronya are S tier. I don't think you can put them anywhere else, in my opinion. In context of a new player, a purely standard banner, right? I'm not saying these characters are S tier compared to all the premium 5 stars. That's not what we're comparing here either. But I do think in this context it needs to be here. Clara, Gepard, and Welt can be changed between A and S tier. If you want to make the case and say, I think Gepard is S tier because he can carry them through one of the end games, which is Simulated Universe. He could like potentially be the carry in Swarm, which is the more difficult version of Simulated Universe. Sure. Right? I can totally get that. What is important is that people now understand the value that these 5 characters bring to the team. And the main thing I want to point out is how Himeko can still have a use in events. I don't know about Yanqing. With that all being said, if you guys disagree with anything on this tier list, right, feel free to give me some constructive criticism in the comment section down below. Maybe not even criticism, maybe you want to share your story, your experience with the character that it might be completely different with mine. Please share it. And the reason I say that is because new players, right, there could be things like I have not pulled Yanqing, right? I'm just speaking from my personal experience of what I've seen of him so far. But it could be that maybe you have a very good experience with him. Maybe you build a free-to-play team around him and clear Memory of Chaos 10. And you were like, it takes a lot of investment, a lot of good artifacts. But I was personally able to make him work and be able to beat all of Memory of Chaos endgame. Share your stories. Same thing with Himeko, for example. Share your stories so that other players who are new to the game can read your story and be like, damn, you know, I pulled Yanqing, I pulled Himeko, but it's not the end of the world. Look at what this guy was able to do with that team. I now know what I should be working on, and that should be able to help me through the early game. Overall, if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe. I'll be making a beginner guide really soon, so if you guys came here from there, feel free to go back and watch the rest of it. Or if you already watched it, thank you so much. I appreciate it. For the rest of you, I hope to see you guys in the next video, and I really, really hope I'm able to make more content around Honkai Star. I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.